Terrific to be joined by Sheriff Jerry Demings from Orange County. Sheriff, let me ask you about what's going on in Baltimore, because here in the Orange County area, even though we've had, the Trayvon Martin thing, we have had very little public unrest, civil unrest. How is it that we've avoided that when Baltimore is seeing this?
Well, I think it all is related to the strength of the relationship that law enforcement has with the community that they serve. And in order to have a good positive relationship, you have to have sustained things occurring over time prior to a crisis occurring. So it's all about working in the community and volunteering for various capacities that are totally not related to law enforcement.
Well, you're certainly watching what's going on up there in Baltimore, and say it happens here, right? You can't arrest everybody, right? Is there prioritizing? Do you pick and choose? You arrest the guy who throws the Molotov cocktail, but maybe you don't arrest the guy that's, running around and jumping on top of the squad car, and maybe you do arrest the guy that set fire to the CVS?
What I can say is, from watching much of the news footage that you've seen, Baltimore has done a pretty good job of exercising great restraint. They have not overreacted to the situation. In fact, they've put up with quite a bit of violence and lawlessness. And so in order to stop that, you do have to hold individuals accountable for their actions. And I believe the elected officials as well as the community leaders have come together and said that they're not going to tolerate further violence in their community. Do
you think they should have thrown up that curfew last night rather than waited until tonight?
Well, logistically, it would have been very difficult to impose a curfew last night, because legally you have to give individuals advanced knowledge that there's a curfew in place. And it may have been very difficult once the unrest began to occur to actually communicate to the citizens that there's a curfew in place. And so I believe it was the right call to delay the curfew until today. That was one of the best things that they could have done.
The mayor, I think, said last night, sometimes the violence is going to play out, and sometimes it's best to let it play out. Is that the tactic that you need to take? Is that you can't stop everybody, and we're just going to make sure as few people get hurt can get hurt?
Well, the ideal way to deal with it is to stop the violence from occurring in the first place. And that can only happen by having an abundance of communication between the elected officials, the community leaders, as well as some of the what I call informal leaders in the community. That has to occur well in advance. And despite your best efforts, in some cases, it won't stop violence from occurring. But I like to believe that we would not be in a similar situation because we work diligently in non-law enforcement related ways. For example, the Orange County Sheriff's Office here runs and operates the Children's Safety Village, the Orange County Police Athletic League, and we work very closely with a lot of nonprofits, especially children's organizations like the YMCA, the Boy Scouts, the Boys and Girls Club, the Girl Scouts, trying to put some things in the bank should we have some strained relationship that occurs. We work very closely with the clergy. I try to make certain that I have a regular relationship with the diversity of the faith community in Orange County as well as here within the region. But even with that, it takes one incident to precipitate sometimes civil unrest to occur.
Sheriff Jerry Demings, we always appreciate you spending a few moments with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And Sheriff, if we can trouble you, if we're going to do one more for the 10 o'clock, if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Can we just keep on going, guys? Here we go. In 3, 2. Let's check in with Sheriff Jerry Demings on this. Sheriff, we're talking about what's going on up there in Baltimore. There's no stopping everybody. You can't arrest everybody, at least not as it's going on. In the days following, will the department up there pour over all the video that they're seeing? And I mean, facial recognition is so good now. Some of these people are probably going to pop up on Facebook. Do you pick some of these people out, some of the worst offenders, and go back and knock on their door and say, guess what? A couple of days ago, you're coming with us?
Absolutely. You know, there's video footage of the lawlessness that has occurred there in Baltimore, and I suspect that the law enforcement authorities will seek to identify the individuals who were involved in some of the most egregious things that occurred. For example, the burglarizing of commercial businesses and setting businesses and other places on fire. They're likely going to be prosecuted once they're identified at a later date.
I think most parents around the country have watched the video of the mother recognizing her son as one of the protesters and gave a big cheer when she smacked him on the head or dragged him off. You know, said, "You're not doing this. You're not going to be one of these guys." Does that make your job that much easier when the parents, when it starts at the home essentially, and the parents are involved in making sure their kids are not a part of the wrongdoing?
Absolutely. It's a good thing for the entire community. The issues that they're having in Baltimore cannot be solved by law enforcement alone. It takes the entire community to come together in these times to be able to deal with the aftermath of what is yet to come.
I'm sure you've done preemptive strikes, so to speak, getting out in the community, making your presence known, and having a good relationship with the people that you serve and protect. But what happens if civil unrest happens in under your watch? You've got a plan in place to deal with that. Is your plan similar to what's going on in Baltimore?
Well, first off, we work on the prevention side to try to stop it from happening in the first place. Secondly, if it does occur, we have to very quickly identify the leadership group and have people other than law enforcement coming together to speak, to try to calm down the fears and the issues that they're dealing with. We've seen that happen in Baltimore. Reverend Jamal Bryant has been very instrumental in bringing together people outside of law enforcement, outside of the government, if you will, to try to calm down the fears of what have been occurring there in Baltimore. We would do the similar thing here in this community. So again, it's all about relationships prior to an event occurring.
Sir, I want to ask you a difficult question. While you certainly don't condone their motives, can you understand and appreciate the reasons behind it? Do you appreciate that the fact that there are many communities, when you go back to Ferguson, that feel like their law enforcement doesn't represent them and sometimes victimizes them? Can you appreciate that? And do you think that something needs to be done to make sure that law enforcement better represents the communities that they serve?
Well, first off, I believe that across our nation, law enforcement does a pretty good job of policing its communities. However, they're human beings. We all have biases that we bring to the table. There is a time now where law enforcement has to really reevaluate the moral compass and the culture that we are instilling in our law enforcement officers as they patrol the streets. The U.S. Department of Justice, for example, has created a program through its community-oriented policing services, or its COPS office, where law enforcement officers can be educated in privacy rights as well as constitutional rights. It's an online testing process that can be given to our staff. My entire employ has taken that online test as well.
All right. Well, sir, you're on the front lines always, and we appreciate you putting yourself out there for us and everyone else that you serve. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.